Welcome to Bits and Pieces Quilting. Today I want to show you how to make the flyaway quilt. Stick with me. Hi, I'm Michelle, and today we're going to make a quilt that I'm calling Flyaway. It's the quilt right here behind me, and it is based on a photo that I took while transiting through the Sydney airport. In the domestics terminal, on your way out to one of the small planes that'll take you to Canberra, there's a wall, and I put a picture here in the video, or maybe here, to show you the photo that I took that really inspired this quilt. I've changed the orientation of the red triangles because I wanted to give it that impression of flying away, but the inspiration for this quilt came from this painting on the wall. I hope you enjoy it. Grab some fabric, grab some scraps, or grab a single color like I did, and let's dive right in. The flyaway quilt is made up of 3 different blocks, and I'm going to take you through each one. The first is a half square triangle, and we're going to make that out of 2 5-inch squares. When you are making half square triangles, 2 squares like this will give you 2 half square triangles. And let me show you how that's done. I'm going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on the back of one of these fabrics. I just got a pencil and my ruler. And then I'm going to layer it with my printed fabric, like this. I'll take it over to the machine and I will sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of this line. And then when I come back, we'll slice it down the center and have 2 half square triangles. These pieces start at 5 inches square. And to make the flyaway quilt that I have as my sample at the baby quilt size, you will need 32 half square triangles in total, which means 16 sets like this, because each set will give you 2 half square triangles. I'm just going to run over to the machine, and I'll be right back. Right. I don't know if you can see the stitching there or if you can see it on the dark side, but I've sewn a 1/4 inch on either side of the drawn line. And so with my ruler and rotary cutter, I'm going to just slice right down that diagonal line right across the pencil line. And from here, we open these up and we have 2 half square triangles. I'm going to press the seams open. You could press these seams to the dark side, just like this, roll it back and press it. But I have found with half square triangles that I much prefer to press the seams open. My friend Sue in Ottawa first encouraged me to do this, and it does take a few extra minutes. And I grouched about it, I'll admit, but Sue was right, and pressing these seams open really does make a difference to the final product. It lays really flat, really even, and it takes some of the bulk out of the corners when you sew these together with other half square triangles. So I tend to prefer to press these open, but you press them however works for you. So with the half square triangles made, we need to square these up. So we started with 5-inch squares, but we're going to trim these to 4.5. And to do that, I use a square ruler that has a 45-degree line down the center. Line that up in the center of my block. Line the 45-degree angle along that center seam on the block, and then make sure that I get 4.5 inches. You don't have to trim very much here, just a little bit. Spin it around, line it back up again with a nice sharp blade and a good amount of pressure down on your ruler so it doesn't slide around. You see that we don't slide a lot off, but depending on how accurate you've cut and how accurate your 1/4 inch seam is, you may have more or less that comes off these different blocks. I always like to square them up. The first one you saw hardly took anything off. This one's going to take a little more off, so it means something somewhere wasn't quite as perfectly lined up as I would have liked. But that's why this squaring is just a good idea. So you can see a little extra came off there, and there'll be a tiny bit more extra to come off here. Oops. My blade didn't go straight along the ruler. Let me try that again. So now 2 perfect 4.5 half square triangles. So this is block 1. You need 32 of these if you're making the baby quilt like I've made. Moving on to block 2, that is made from 4.5-inch squares of background fabric and a 3.5-inch square of printed fabric. I've already drawn a pencil line from corner to corner on this 3.5-inch square, and I'm going to set it into the corner of my 4.5-inch block like this, and I'm going to sew right along that line. I'll just run over to the machine and be right back. So I've just run a stitching line right along that pencil line, and I'm going to fold this back and check, and you can see I did a pretty good job. It lines up really nicely. And so what I'm going to do is trim off 1/4 inch away from my stitch line. And if you've watched any of my videos in the past, you'll know that I always save these offcuts from the sew and flip method, from the snowball method, whatever you want to call it. I always save these. And I usually sew 1/4 inch seam along this edge, pair it with another one, and make an hourglass block. But in this project, we're actually going to use this piece in a minute for our other block. So put that aside for just a second and we'll come right back to it. I'm going to press this seam open just like I did with the half square triangles. And that is going to also help the whole quilt lay flat because all the seams are pressed the same way across the quilt. So that's block number 2. Block number 1 is the half square triangle. Block number 2 is this snowballed corner that doesn't quite make it a half square triangle. For the third block, we're going to use a 4.5-inch square again. And in this case, we want a 2-inch square. But with this offcut from our previous block, we can use this. And so what I want you to do is use your ruler, set it at 2 inches, and slice off these little corners like this. So you end up with a piece that is a 2-inch square with a little bite out of it. But with the sew and flip method, we don't need this bite. So we're going to use this piece, and I'm just going to draw a line diagonally from corner to corner, like this. Set it into the corner of this square, and line that up, like so. And again, just like I did with the 3.5-inch block, I'm going to sew from corner to corner. We will cut this off, and our sew and flip method gives us the third unit for the flyaway quilt. I'm going to just run and sew that and show you what the final block looks like. So this is the block stitched. I'm just going to trim 1/4 inch away from my stitching line, and you can see that this is what I have left. These are not pieces worth saving for me. Some people might be able to use them, but that hits my tolerance for small pieces. Like the others, I'm going to press this seam open. And these are the 3 blocks that you need for the flyaway quilt. As I said at the beginning, you're going to need 32 of the half square triangles made from 16 sets. For this medium-sized block, I think of this as the medium-sized triangle, you're going to need 30 of these. And for this one, you're going to need 37. So with 30 of these offcuts, you can make these. And for the additional 7, you'll need a few additional 2-inch squares in order to finish these blocks. And so with all 99 blocks made, we're going to do a 9 by 11 layout for a baby quilt. So let me get these all sewn up and laid out, and I'll show you what the quilt looks like. So to lay out the flyaway quilt, I ended up just pinning it up to my filming backdrop, but you can see I've got the large half square triangles down at the bottom and in the bottom left corner. And then those slowly change into the medium-sized triangle blocks and then transition yet again into the small triangle blocks into the top right corner. I sort of think it looks like things are flying further into the distance, with the larger ones closer in the foreground and the lighter ones, the ones with more of a white background, fading off into the background. So I'm going to quilt this up and put the red binding on the edge of it, and I'll show you what the final quilt looks like. Thank you for watching this video on the flyaway quilt. I hope you enjoyed it. I've made it as a 2-color quilt, but you could absolutely make this out of scraps. Using a whole bunch of different random colors, I think it would make a really cute and cheerful quilt. This is a baby size. The pattern that you can get from my website at www.bitsandpiecesquilting also has all of the instructions, measurements, and amounts to make a larger size quilt. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to make the most of your fabric bits and pieces.